Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you may be. Welcome to the Legal Innovation Forum's 2026 webinar series, which is ongoing. And today, we are delighted to be talking about AI as a client service superpower and how that can help law firms and other legal service providers drive growth for their businesses proactively, serve their clients better, and leverage all the latest and greatest available when it comes to technology and AI. I want to thank Latera for being a partner for today's webinar, and they're a strategic partner of the forum. We're doing lots of interesting programs with them, so delighted to have them as our partner for today's webinar. Um, Before I begin, I will just sort of run through what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about client expectations and relationship management. We're going to be talking about how clients are evaluating law firms and other sector service providers based on technology. We're going to talk about challenges and opportunity as it relates to AI and some takeaways for how to be innovative in your process innovation and your client development and retention. We have a brilliant group of panelists today, and I'm very excited to have them all here. Number of different reasons. First of all, we do have a couple of us who are north of the border, Jackie and myself, based in Toronto. And so we have an international panel, and everybody here has a different perspective on this. So I think we have a rich and valuable discussion ahead of ourselves. So without further ado, I'm going to have all the panelists introduce themselves in order of the slides. So James, I will ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself first.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Andrew. Pleasure, everyone. Great to be on and appreciate you participating and listening in on our discussion. James Wang, I am the co-founder here at Postalize. We've been thinking heavily about that idea of proactive relationship management and turning AI not just from a thing to use or deploy, but really how to drive revenue from that, right? So I'm super interested and excited to be diving into this one. If the prep call was any indication, we've got some fireworks coming up here. So excited.
All right, perfect. Jackie.
Sure. My name is Jackie Dinsmore. I'm managing partner of Caravel Law based in Toronto. We also have offices in Calgary and Vancouver. I started my career on Bay Street, big firm, went in-house, and actually became an entrepreneur. I've had three exits. During that journey, I got really super frustrated with lawyers, and I can say that because I am one, and really wanted to revolutionize and kind of disrupt the industry to make it better for clients and lawyers. So Caravel has 120 lawyers, and we're really trying to make obviously client service our superpower. And so I'm really excited about the talk today. Thanks so much, Andrew.
All right, thank you for joining, Jackie. Mark.
All right. Well, thanks for having me. I am Mark Levin. I am Chief Marketing and Business Development Officer at Marshall Gerstein. I've been in that role for three different firms for going on 20 years now. I like to tell people I'm a recovering attorney. I practiced before that. I had a startup, only one exit as opposed to Jackie's three, but also in the legal tech space, and really trying to help attorneys through the entire attorney life cycle process. So excited to be here, and love the way that James said there'd be fireworks on this because it was a really good prep call. So should be a good day.
All right, fantastic. So, Richard.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to be here. Thank you to everyone who's joining and participating. Yeah, I'm Rich Robbins. I'm the director of Applied AI at Reed Smith. I practiced law for about 25 years, 15 at a major firm, 10 as a general counsel, a publicly traded company. I've built a knowledge management department in the last few years. Been focusing on natural language processing, machine learning, and then that turned into generative AI. Here at Reed Smith, I am responsible for how we make sort of effective and responsible use of AI at scale across the firm, not just in connection with the operation, not in connection with the practice of law, but the operation of our business as well. So I've worn many hats but not all at the same time. Thrilled to be here.
All right. Yeah, thrilled to have you. And Richard, good to see you again after speaking at our Chicago conference last November. Rachel.
Yeah, thanks. I'm so thrilled to be here with this incredible crew. I mean, every one of you is so impressive. And as with so many of you, in my 20 years of plus of experience in the legal industry, I've worked in almost every corner of the law firm, including the mailroom. And I was a practicing lawyer for quite a bit, and I think I've fully recovered at this point. And I was in the C-suite at an AmLaw 100 law firm. Most of my time, though, has been spent in legal technology leadership. I was at Thomson Reuters, and now I'm at Latera. And during that time, I've worked with most of the strategic leaders at firms of all sizes and prestige, and I'm excited to share some of what I've learned along that journey. Thanks
All
so
right.
much.
Thanks, Rachel. And I'm Andrew. I'm the founder of the forum. We are interested in the intersection of business and law and the business of law. We've been around since 2018. We run conferences, Canada, the US. We're running a forum in Dubai, our second forum in April, and London this year as well. And before I started my company, I started my career with the Financial Times in London, and it was with them, and then Bloomberg in New York over a 13-year stretch, and returned back to Canada to set up my company in 2018. So delighted to have you all here. To the audience, please do ask questions in the Q&A and chat functions. We'll try to get to them as we go along. But we have lots to cover, and then James at the end will do a brief presentation. So let's talk about this new era that we're living in, because client expectations have always been high for law firms and other sector service providers, and require some proactivity. But we also have been living in the AI era firmly the last 2-3 years. And that's an exciting innovation and opportunity. So let's check in on how that landscape looks these days. Mark, I'm going to ask you first, because you're focused on this day to day in your firm and figuring that out.
Yeah, so yeah, I think everyone has a take on this one. The table stakes for the longest time, 20, well, when I started 20 years ago in that area, or even when I was an attorney before that, was really doing good work, right? Good work got you more good work. That changed quickly in a lot of ways, right? Over the years, it became, that was table stakes, and beyond that became everything else of not only doing good work, but understanding a client's business as well as they understood their own, or maybe even better than how they understood their own. So that proactivity side of it has become so central to all good client relationship management, and really being able to show not only the value you provide as an attorney and as a law firm, but everything that you have around that value in terms of, being able to, I think as Richard likes to say, see around corners for your clients.
All right. Jackie, give us the Canadian take here for our audience's sake. Some Canadians, some Americans, and some folks from outside of North America. What's going on in your business these days? How's it evolving? You're a leading ALSP in Canada, and lots of exciting things going on with Caravel, very highly regarded.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, Andrew. Yeah, I mean, we saw this a long time ago, right? The idea that lawyers had to be more practical, more business minded. I mean, at Caravel, we select 1 in 42 lawyers to join us, and that's one of the principal things is that we want lawyers that have either worked in a business or started their own business, because they have that kind of walked a mile in the shoes of the client approach. And I think there's a greater expectation even today that, lawyers have gone from service provider to truly embedded advisor. It's not there, you're not just providing a service anymore. You're expected to know the client sector, like not just the law. You're expected to know market trends, just expected to know AI impacts and financing environments, geopolitical risk. And so You can't be the sales prevention team anymore. As a funny story, I remember when I first started in-house, I wrote a 15-page memo to the business team. I was really proud of it. It had the to and the from and the subject line. And the business team looked at me like I had three heads. They're like, I am not going to read this. And that was 20 years ago. And it has gotten far, far, far worse in terms of what is expected of lawyers in that sense. So or I guess you could say it's gotten far better. So
Yeah.
it's kind
And
of
as
interesting.
an adjunct to that, I mean, how are folks, on the buy side of the equation, responding to your offering at Caravel, in comparison to the classic sort of in-house law firm model?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they really see the difference, right? I think they see that lawyers that have that practical and business-minded experience and really want to walk alongside clients. And that's what a caravel is, by the way. When we had to think of this name, it was kind of, we had to do it fairly quickly. And a caravel is a ship that navigates smaller waters that maybe big ships can't navigate. So the idea is that you have to become more nimble and you have to walk alongside your clients. And we're really seeing that more, especially with AI. There's an expectation now that we've got these tools, and so we should be doing things more efficiently and effectively.
All right. Thanks, Jackie. Okay, Rachel, I know we've got lots of different voices on this, but I promise we'll get through everybody. Rachel, you've got a really interesting take given your career path, given your work at Latera. Now you get to really see how the landscape is evolving. Any key takeaways in this AI era that you're witnessing that are changing in terms of this client relationship dynamic between legal service providers and their clients?
Yeah, I think Jackie really captured it. I mean, speed, urgency, it's everything. We need to be incredibly hyper responsive to our clients, or they will leave and they will not tell us. We need to be really concise in our answers because, our attorneys, I was telling Jackie the other day that, our GC had the same story that, the first time he came in, he needed an answer and someone sent him a 10-page memo and he was like, I can't work with this. I need an answer and I need to get it to my stakeholders as fast as possible. And so speed and urgency is everything. And we're just seeing that accelerate with AI because we know that we can get an answer fast. We can go to ChatGPT, we can go to Claude, and we're going to get a very fast answer. And unfortunately, our clients and their stakeholders are expecting the same from us.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about the tech side of things. I'm moving on to Richard and James. James, you'll go very last as a tech entrepreneur. But Richard, you have seen these waves of tech and law firm innovation across the board in so many different eras. And so what do you see going on now in this sort of, at least in the focus of the client
Sure.
side of things?
Indulge me for a bit. And if you want to push me back, that's great. But I want to circle back to something Mark said, and I want to tie it all together, which is at the end of the day, I think the best firms know their clients incredibly well. The best lawyers know their clients incredibly well. And the highest compliment I ever got when I was practicing was when a client would say, you've got my back, you're seeing around corners. And I spent my time knowing my clients, knowing their business, following what was going on in the world. And they could say, when I did my job right, if you call, I know it matters. I know you got my back. As Mark said, great lawyering, table stakes. Got to have that. But the best firms go far beyond that. And what we can do with the technology now is make it easier for people to meet that level. We should be doing a great job of understanding what's going on and using the technology available to understand what our clients are doing, what's going on with the counterparties in a deal, everything that affects them. We should be harvesting that information so that we can reach out to them at the right time with the right perspective in a concise way that matters. Technology enables all that. That's where I think we're at, and we have the ability to do so like we could not before. The best lawyers and firms always did that. now we have the tools to raise the bar so that more can do it easily, which raises client expectations to do that. And it's a race to the top, not a race to the bottom.
Yeah,
That's
a
my
bit of an
take.
arms race, right?
Yeah, but it's you know, we can do more for our clients, and it's not just about the lawyering. Yes, we can summarize, we can analyze, we can get answers faster, but the clients want to know that we've got their back, that we understand what's going on in the world, so that we can build those enduring relationships so that the phone call keeps ringing. The phone keeps ringing.
All right, Richard, thank you. James, what's your take?
Yeah, I'd love to jump in on this because I think we're all dancing around the same thing. And in fact, if we boil this down, I think to me, it's really about the value that our attorneys are providing to our clients, right? So if you strip away the technology aspect of that, I think there's that speed, there's that competition, there's always somebody else trying to eat your lunch. But I think where Richard and I think Mark and Jackie, you talked to this as well. If you truly care about your client, if you bring that value, it doesn't matter if, if you guys, and we talked about this earlier, I want to give you guys this thought experiment. Think about this, right? Like we transition from, the pen to the typewriter or the typewriter to a computer to the internet and AI, and like you throw all these tools out. If you think about this, and Andrew, I'll give you this too as well. Think about this. Let's say, for example, tomorrow, quantum computing becomes ubiquitous. Everyone has access to it. Every scenario possible can be thought of and documented and acted upon in the split second. Does that change what a lawyer does? Does that change the value of what they bring to their client, right? Being able to see everything and being able to work through and all those sorts of things. To be honest, the technology is the technology. If you boil it
Yeah.
away, you really have to pay attention to what your client's needs are. And the technology is not going to be what stands behind that client. It's the person's relationship, the ability to care and to provide that value to that business. So I guess I'm the anti-technologist here in this particular context, but I do agree with all my panelists. It's really about that client that you bring. Sorry, the value that you bring to your client.
Yeah, I think that's all great points. And James, that's a really good jumping off point into this notion of value. Because two things. One big driver is the world is becoming the business world and the entire world is always a complicated place, but it's even more complex now. There's a lot of risk to navigate. If you're running a business, if you're advising a business, if you're running a law firm, you are advising your clients navigating very turbulent, uncertain waters. And that element of trust and value that lawyers can provide to their clients is paramount. It's actually fairly existential, I would argue, if you look at it in an organizational context. And the way we think about it at the forum is we call it a risk on world, which the financial markets think is a positive thing, but it's a risk on world for organizations. You've got to be thinking about balancing the potential upside with all of the known unknowns that are coming up on the horizon. So that's the key value point that lawyers and attorneys and in-house counsel can really provide to help guide organizations through that. So with that being said, I want to kind of evolve this question a little bit, and Richard, jumping off, the legal work itself is to some extent table stakes. There's lots of folks who can do the same thing. I mean, there's obviously, but a lot of it comes down to relationships. So if we look at this curve in 5 years from now, what do you think that will look like, Richard, in terms of how it's evolved, that relationship between firms and their clients? Because this AI revolution is just continuing apace and is totally changing everything.
Yeah. So we're at a fascinating juncture, right? So law firms are figuring out how they're going to use what they're going to work with. We look at law firms, I think, in maybe four ways. Traditional law firms, firms that are sort of AI enabled, they're using those AI tools. The AI first firm. And then we're hearing this phrase, the AI native firm, right? Where they're reimagining the work, the workflow, how everything gets delivered. At the same time, that technology that's available to the firms is available to the clients. When I had my legal department, my mantra was if it's routine, I want my team to do it. And if it's not, I want to go to outside counsel. But now what's routine is changing pretty dramatically our ability to do things. So we could do things in-house that we couldn't before. So as the technology allows us to take things that were previously more thought of as services and we could turn them into products, that upends everything. And not everything that the lawyers do can be turned into a product, but there are a bunch of tasks that can. So I think the whole market's going to resegment. Law firms are going to rethink what they deliver, how they price it. Clients are going to have more choices. So I expect that we're going to see, I don't think this is earth-shattering, more routine tasks will become more commodity-like, maybe the same forces that push things to ALSPs before that law firms might have done traditionally should accelerate. I think there's going to be a premium on the things that where the lawyers and the law firms really deliver value. The judgment, the counseling, the strategy, the risk management, the client relationships, and less on the commoditized work. That has ramifications that shot through our organizations, and we're going to see how it sorts out.
Mark, your take on it. Thank you, Rich.
Yeah, so it's really similar. The and I sort of want to pass to Jackie because she really talked well in the practice session about the value side of it, and Richard just talked about it a bit. And actually, Jackie, if you want to take it, I don't want to basically restate exactly all of the good stuff you talked about, and I'll jump in afterwards.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, it really comes down to, I think what clients want is they don't want these fancy tools and they want outcomes, right? And we're being kind of crowded with the noise. We have a director of legal innovation. I wish I had this slide. We have this slide of all the legal tech companies that have been started in 2025, and there's hundreds. It's just everywhere. And so people are getting overwhelmed by like the pretty tools. At the end of the day, just what Mark said, it comes down to outcome, it comes down to value. And that comes in the place of, who's doing the work and also how you price. So I think we're going to see a future of lawyers where they're valued because they can basically oversee AI and explain it. And there's going to be a big value in lawyers that can do that. So for all the folks that are on the call, brush up on your AI abilities because if you can go out there and explain it to clients, that's the key. And I think when it comes down to pricing, I think there's some real value in there in how we price. Is the billable hour going away? It is not going away because clients don't want it to go away. So it will always be there for complex, bespoke work. However, I think when we look at value and pricing, there's going to be law firms and ALSPs are going to have to be more creative. They're going to have to do cap fees and fixed fees and really be creative in the way that they price. And I think that this is an opportunity for us at the end of the day.
All right. Thank you, Jackie. So Mark, do you want to build on that?
Yeah, yeah, and on that pricing note, like that, you know, ideally you'd understand what something is worth, whether it's, this patent protects this much overall revenue, what we think this may be in the future, et cetera. This litigation protects this much, and the outcome can be here. At the end of the day, as you're trying to price for all those things and figure out what the value is, that value and that pricing model is sort of, okay, here's what we've set upon as what it's worth to you, what it's worth to the firm. And now however we get there is up to us, right? That's the sort of bringing in the AI, driving in better efficiencies, that continuous improvement process, the learning by doing of keeping stable teams so that people get better and better at those same roles as they go along. But man, like the pace of the technology that can be involved in that, right? That is now this different learning curve that's always going on with a different continual improvement. And I do pricing within my firm as well, and looking at these, 2 to 3 year pricing deals makes you wonder, like, I don't know what pricing looks like next month or next year. let alone 3 years from now. Like I can make good guesses, and that's at the end of the day what we're all trying to do to make sure that we can move along on our business parts of things. But it's an interesting world. Right?
All right.
Andrew,
Thanks.
Andrew,
Yeah,
can
go
I
ahead,
jump in?
James.
I want
You're
to give you a
next.
thought
Yeah.
here. I have a parallel thought that maybe we can use from a modeling perspective, and I'm sure other folks here have heard of, for example, the K-shaped economy, right? So like the haves and the have-nots. For me, I think of it in this context of, for example, and I think Jackie, you were talking about this, the higher level work is kind of like the haves, right? Where it's really complex. It requires somebody to stand behind it. There may not be a lot of people to be able to actually think into that particular space. And that's again to that idea of driving as much value as possible. I think with some of these tools, from an AI perspective, you're driving a lot of the, let's call it the mundane or the repetitive type work down into the have-not aspect of the K-shaped kind of, growth, which is to say that if it's easy, if it's repeatable, if it's things that, in-house has tools to take advantage of, that's going to be the part gets driven down, right? So you'll see a bigger bifurcation of where that work goes, and the specialization and the thought and the work is going to be at the higher part of that K. So I use that as maybe a parallel model just to think about kind of that split and where these tools can come help, drive either up or down, the evolution of pricing of value of the work that goes behind this.
Okay. Thanks,
Hey,
James.
Andrew.
Rachel, yeah, I was going to ask you next. Go ahead.
I want to be a little spicy here and disagree with everyone, just for fun.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So everyone here really focused on value, on the value that they're bringing. And I am not arguing that value is critical, but I will tell you that every law firm we work with is suggesting the same, right? Value, value, value is what we're trying to prove. And so what we saw is this evolution of law firms looking at AI for legal work. And everybody started saying, we can provide more value because we have AI for legal work. Everybody now has AI for legal work. And then they said, okay, well, we are going to do AI for business, and therefore we're going to price better. And now, everybody's trying to price better and price each other out of the market. And to James's point, there's always going to be the bet the farm, CYA matters that are going to go to the top law firm, and there's always going to be the commoditized firm matters that are going to go to, the cheapest. But at the end of the day, it's the middle stuff that's what's in play. And that middle stuff, it's not the value. It is, but it's the relationship. People buy and make buying choices emotionally, and they justify it rationally. So at the end of the day, it's the relationship that's going to win, as long as, yes, you can back it up by proving that you can show the value.
Oh, Rich, you're
Okay.
not being that spicy. That's where we started. It's the relationship.
Right.
It's the relationship. The
But
lawyering is, I think, table stakes. And I love these discussions about value. And I'd love to say, it's like, how do we put a value on a bit of work? It's really hard. We talk about all that. But at the end of the day, this is a relationship and a trust business. And, for me, um, I anchor this whole thing back to where we started, which is the if I know my client better than my client knows itself, if I know the deal better than any other party knows the deal, and if I know the counterparty better than the counterparty knows themselves, boy, we can deliver great service that our clients will appreciate. We will know to hit hard where they care, for which they will be prepared to pay because we are delivering value. Uh, and value is about what they value. So the point here, I think, is using the technology to understand everything we care about better. And so I'm in violent agreement with you.
It is that full circle, because you started back at the beginning of this conversation with, talking about how it's about elevating everyone into that rainmaker status. And I'm paraphrasing, you didn't use those exact words, but, I mentioned it was kind of AI for legal work, and then it was AI for business. And now it's like, can we use AI for relationships to strengthen those, to elevate all the people who are not rainmakers into that relationship superpower. And that is exactly what I see as the next evolution of this. And there was a spicy comment in the chat about, are we going to talk about technology? And yes, that's exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about how to elevate those individuals and those relationships.
Yeah, I think the quote from the audience, well, there's a couple quotable quotes. One is actually it got erased. Anyway, they said, is this a religious session? It's innovation session. But we are going to talk about tech. Another one said AI can't take your client for dinner, which I'm curious to hear more on. But let's talk about this tech adoption thing. I'm going to start with you, Richard, again. You've seen this come in waves. Do clients, I mean, in this context of what you know about clients and how you can add value, that's probably not technology that they're asking whether you have or not. But do clients, are you noticing, are they paying attention to how tech enabled your firm is now? And if so, what's the impact of that?
Yep. Um, I will. Now's my chance to maybe be a little contrarian. Um, when I was buying, right, when I was a general counsel and I was buying legal services, I got to tell you, all I care about is what you delivered. I don't care what technology you're using. And right now, we are overwhelmed with clients who are asking, right? They care. How are you using AI? What are you using? How is it delivering value? And I'll answer those things all day and all night. But I've yet to hear someone say, we hired you because you have this tech or this tool. No,
Yeah,
you hired us because maybe we committed to doing your work faster, or we were able to do some sort of fixed price or AFA that made sense for us and the client. Or maybe they work with us enough and they don't care how we got it done, but we got it done. And the way we're doing that is using the technology. I find this obsession with listing every tool and every toy that we have with our clients. And I'll have those conversations all day and all night. But at the end of the day, I'm buying results. I don't care how you deliver it. So, so yes, clients care, but I've yet to hear the client say, we chose you because of all this technology that you've adopted.
right. It's a
And
good
that's where
point.
I'm a little
I,
stuck.
I'm seeing some interesting clients, right? I'm seeing clients who said, I just had one last week. If you are not using technology or AI, we will not engage with you. Full stop. And we haven't even started with the client yet, right? And I've seen, and it tends to be the bigger clients who mark up my engagement letter like crazy to say that we won't use AI. So I've seen kind of the both spectrums. And I think we're talking about AI used in work. I think we can talk about AI used in relationships, right? And in onboarding. And so, what I've tried to kind of impose is this idea that we can use AI for relationships. We can implement it for like instead of that relationship living in the partner's inbox, it can live in dedicated client teams using AI through like centralized CRM systems and formal feedback loops. We hear about NPS all the time, right? That is a form of AI. That's client surveys, right? Like at the end of it, it's a form of technology. That's really, really important. The legal industry has an NPS score of under 40 right now, compared to Amazon and Apple, which is over 70, right? So we need to use technology to improve our client relationships, number one. We need to use technology to improve how we respond to clients. We have to start leading and not waiting. And what I mean by that is clients aren't expecting us to be reactive. They want to see us sending out, if there's a regulatory change, they wanted to see us using our technology to talk about that regulatory change in a proactive way rather than waiting for them to call us and say, okay, we're going to do this work based on you calling us. So I think there's lots of different ways we can use technology. And the third way we talked about briefly is pricing, right? And using the data that technology gives us to price smarter. So I'm seeing all of these kind of ways to use technology outside of just the legal work that really produces the outcomes, Richard, that you're talking about.
I, I'm
Um,
I'm chomping at the bit
Thanks.
to jump in here. There's a
Please.
lot of good stuff from our panelists, and I know I'm sure Mark, you'd love to talk about the surveys and stuff like that. But
Sure.
I see a lot of things here, right? I think Jackie, you're on point. I think people you have the full spectrum. People who want you to use technology. I think partly because they see that as an advantage. They see the things of like speed and the ability to scale and those sorts of things. On the other side, people are saying you shouldn't use technology because I think they feel the risk of that, right? The exposure, the potential for, and everyone's heard the stories, the training and like the leaks and like all these sorts of things. So there's this kind of like maelstrom of like competing requirements, that are kind of like pulling at the technology aspect of that. The other thing I would agree with is we should pull these pieces apart, right? The using of AI as an example in the work has a different risk profile than, say, for example, using these technology pieces in terms of continuing to build your relationships with your clients and with your prospects. And I think in that space that we're talking about, and I know this is a big piece for today, particularly around client service, I think the technology helps in the scale, in the ability to know what's going on, in the ability to make you a better lawyer because you know what's going on. And Richard, I think you talked about this as well. You used to just read the Wall Street Journal from, front to back because you needed to be as well informed as possible about your clients and bring these risks to them and be that person that knows what's going on. Now, instead of reading the Wall Street Journal, you have to read 1,000 newspapers a day to stay on top of these sorts of things. That's impossible. That's where the technology comes into play. And you've got to marry that with the relationships that you have in place because that's how you bring that value to your clients. So it's a good distinction. We do need to break that out and it's got to be, thought of.
Touch
Yeah.
on that a
So
little, James, because I think
sure.
you're spot on, which is we all these discussions about risk and the practice of law, all true, right? And I can wax poetic about all that. But when we're talking about marketing, business development, the client relationship stuff, the risk profile is completely different. And I think that um, using the more innovative technology is a fabulous place to be on the client relationship side, on the know your client, understand what's going on in the market space is a great area to be aggressive now while we're being a little more circumspect around, well, be careful about using agentic AI to do the actual lawyering. I think that's a really important distinction. It's sort of my, step on the gas, tap the brakes kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a great I like that quote, Richard. Step on the gas, hit the brakes, tap the brakes. I want to talk and I want Rachel and Mark to give us a little bit more of a concrete example, right? So Rachel, tell us like what Latera is doing with your foundation proactive stack and platform, how that's helping the law firms that are using Latera. And then Mark, I wanted you to maybe expound a little bit on how that, how that's impacting your practice. So to sort of bring this to life a little bit about how it's looking on the ground now with a market leading tech platform and stack. And James, maybe I'll have you fill in on that piece at the end.
Yeah, I'm glad. I think people have been in the chat chomping at the bit to hear this aspect of it. So yeah, we recognized that this was a challenge several years ago when law firms were trying to share, how do I win this business? We need to show our expertise, show that value aspect of it, and so we have a tool called Foundation that actually surfaces experience and credentials so that you can really easily show how that value component comes in. But then the risk became we still see clients walking out of the door because lawyers just forget to follow up, right? In the course of business, lawyers, and I'm speaking for all of those on the call, we were all really busy. And our goal in law school was, hey, how do we be the best lawyer we can be? How do we provide the best answers? Sometimes we were a little bit too thorough in those answers, but it was in service of being really good lawyers and good partners. What we didn't think about is how do we put a ping on our Outlook and make sure that we're constantly saying, hey, how's it going? Or, hey, do you need my help? That's just not top of mind. And so we're seeing this issue of, attrition. And then at the other side of it, we're seeing these lawyers who are saying, most clients need like four or more practice areas where they need support, and most law firms aren't even scratching the surface of that, even if that's their main client. And not only that, a client will come to you and say, "Hey, I need help with this," and because that lawyer doesn't do it, they'll say, "Oh, I have a friend at this other law firm." That's crazy. We keep that work in-house, but we just don't know what our colleagues are doing. So, long story short, we realized that we needed to help. And these brilliant people at Postalize had come up with spent years and years figuring out how to get alerts to lawyers that were actually valuable. So, not news alerts. And I know that there are probably everybody in the audience has tried to have a Google alert or a news alert to say, on their top clients. And it's too much. It's just too much. I've never been able to make that work. These are real alerts. And what happens is it comes to you and it says, "Hi, this is happening and it's a legal challenge that's very likely coming up for your client." And they spot this early on, right? When the filing comes in before the bankruptcy has actually been filed. It was in long before in a financial document. "Hey, this is likely to come up. You've done this before. Here's the experience you have at your law firm. There's three people who do have a relationship, but here's what I recommend. Write this email. Here's the person to send it to." And it goes. And you suddenly have this coordinated business development effort that took very little time. And you're not pulling somebody away from their legal work. And so we're trying to fill that gap so that lawyers, so that, to Richard's point, we have the rainmakers and we have the non, and we're trying to pull the nons up so that law firms can be really hyper responsive, hyper successful in this challenging competitive day and age.
All right, thanks, Rachel. Mark, how does that look like on the ground at your firm?
Yeah,
How are you
so
implementing this tech?
so two things there. Marshall Gerstein's been with Postalize for what feels like a long time, and it's probably just a year. But that's how quickly that all that technology was there. One of the things that has really been fascinating about Postalize for me is it was out of this sort of like one of my attorneys kept coming to me with "Hey, can I have your legal department keep track of all of these things for what I'm writing and figure out all the people to whom I should be sending this thought leadership?" And like literally all of the people was all of the people, like anyone out there who should be in this whole thing. And you looked at it and was like, well, that was great. If I had a staff of 96 people, maybe I could put six of them on this one project for you, and then only have these 200 other people that would have to worry about other stuff. Um, but like all of a sudden, there was a scale, there was an ability to do a lot of these things and to amplify that through Postalize so that we could see who was out there, not only through like LinkedIn and other spots, but sort of tying into some of those signals and get that work out, get that thought leadership out to those people in a very automated way. That was the first use case that we used with that particular attorney, but we also use it to sort of Rachel mentioned the like what we learned in law school, and nowhere on there was did anyone tell me that I had to keep track of like, you know, 70 different clients, 200 different people within those clients, whatever it may be, so that I could constantly keep up with whatever chatter is now out there through LinkedIn, through news sources, through whatever it may be. And it is this overwhelming sort of broad sense. So what we get from Postalize is just sort of this like, if it's going on in LinkedIn, if I'm seeing it there, it's now all of a sudden showing up on my dashboard so that I have this little like reminder that says, "Hey, Richard's got this going on. Maybe you should reach out to him and talk about that." And it's just sort of set up as an email that has an AI part that's already set into it. Here's the email you can send. Do I ever send that email? Because I use this myself. No, I don't actually send the exact email. I look and go, oh, that's really interesting. And I have flavor on what I should send out. So I add in that little bit and then it goes out and it's done all of a sudden instead of like, the thing that I would have wanted to do. It's now the thing that is done. And then the second part of it, Jackie talked about the NPS side of things. Like we listen to our clients through client surveys. We actually, through all of the attorneys within our firm, offer to do client surveys at 100% of our clients every year, right? That's a huge undertaking. It's on scale. We use clearly rated. Do all my attorneys take me up on that? Absolutely not. There are a lot that don't allow us to push their clients, but you have this coalition of the willing at first. So now we have like 40, 50% of the clients that we actually survey in any given year. That's really good. And it keeps going up
Really
every year.
good.
And each time that we have a save like that, we start realizing that there's a client that's not happy that we can actually talk to before they leave. That's a really good thing. And
Uh,
Jackie, our NPS score, 70%. Pretty good.
well
So
above the
and
mean.
that keeps going
Yeah.
up too. So
One thing, housekeeping, I was so engrossed in our conversation that I forgot to say the CLE code words. So I hope everyone can catch up on them. But the first three are knowledge, retention, and profit. Knowledge, retention, and profit. My apologies for not mentioning those earlier. But I want to move it to Jackie to get your take on this topic. And Mark's been saying to you, and then I want to talk about how you get uh, lawyers to start adopting this, right? Because you have these great you know platforms and data points and ways for them to express, but how do you get them to start integrating that into their workflow? But Jackie, you first on this topic.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'll address the second question, I think,
Yeah.
first. It's hard to find lawyers that will really embrace this, especially, I'm not going to throw people under the bus, but especially older lawyers, right? And what I'm really seeing, which is really interesting in the legal world, is this idea of reverse mentorship. We're seeing junior lawyers actually reversing senior or mentoring senior lawyers, which is fabulous, right? Gone are the days where these junior lawyers are shoved in a room with a bunch of banker boxes and are expected to do that. They actually now have the opportunity to do a little bit more complex work, and they get to do this reverse mentorship. I mean, we are in a unique position. We are a law firm, so sometimes I don't want to say we're necessarily an ALSP because we do act like an ALSP, but we're in a unique position because we've always tried to be ahead of the curve, and so we didn't have that kind of cultural resistance that a lot of the traditional law firms have, and we didn't have the legacy systems in place. So us being able to move quickly was easier, and we looked for lawyers that were entrepreneurial from the outset, that embraced technology, that were willing to use it. When I have a lawyer that comes to me that might have the most amazing Bay Street pedigree and most amazing in-house experience, but they don't believe in embracing technology, I typically don't want to hire them, to be honest with you, because I
Yeah.
know I see our future. And at the end of the day, it goes back to what I was saying before. If we don't have lawyers that can oversee AI and technology and be really comfortable with it, I think they're going to get left behind.
Um, Great. Richard, what are you saying? Because you've been spending a lot of your career convincing lawyers to adopt technology. And is it different this time? What are you noticing? What's unique?
Leadership matters. So the most successful programs I've been involved in is because it was viewed as a strategic imperative, and senior most leaders said, "This matters." It doesn't matter, which firm I've been at, or whether it was, building a knowledge management program or now pushing the Gen AI stuff. Um, when you have buy-in and drive from the top, and then a little bit of success and leaders saying, "Hey, I expect this," then it takes care of itself. So, we in our firm, we've had good buy-in, but what really kicked things into high gear was when our global managing partners said, every associate will be trained and using, I love the and using, our AI platform. And everyone focused on training, and then it was like, no, 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 it wasn't training for the sake of training. Now we're looking at use, and leaders came in and said, I'm only going to staff lawyers on my deal who are using this technology. And my practice and the people I tend to vibe well with are the corporate M&A types. That's what I did for many years. We
Hmm.
build our teams. We choose which specialists are going to be on our teams. And when person who's assembling a team says, "Yeah, My team's built of people who understand and use this stuff, and that's how I'm going to pick and how I'm going to staff. Boy, it takes care of itself. And so it's nobody's pet project. It is a strategic imperative. The
Mm.
message comes, top down and consistent, and we do it every day and in every way. When that happens, you get success. If not, it's just somebody's pet project.
For what it's worth, we did the exact same thing here at Latera for our own usage, right? Not, yes, we're a legal tech company, and yes, we have all sorts of AI that we provide to law firms, but internally at Latera, we needed our people to adopt AI and make sure that we were using it every single day to be more efficient, more effective, more responsive, all the things that we're talking about. It's everywhere. And it took our CEO saying, this is my number one priority. You are all going to do this, or you can kind of find a different place to be. And it's the same thing. It was training, and it was expectation, and it was reinforcement and following it. And guess what? That's what it took. And everywhere we've seen that, and I've seen adoption attempted so many different law firms, and that is what works. Anything else without that top level leadership, it fails.
Thanks, Rachel. So, Mark, agree, disagree? What's your experience been?
Totally agree. So it's one of those things that, and whether it's a client survey side, Postalize, anything that we use as a marketing tool, as a business development tool, when people see that we're using it, that we're finding opportunities from this, we even had this from PitchBook, which we adopted a few, I don't know, 5 years ago. But when people were starting to see the wealth of information that was there, all of a sudden they're like, whoa, where did you get this? Right? Well, the library had tons of great material, but this was material that was actually like not normally in our realm. It was normally in the private equity and venture capital space, not normally in an IP firm, but it's
Yeah,
stuff that we needed that was really useful to us. Same thing with Postalize, like my ability to suddenly come up with this and say, hey, these people are looking to hire counsel and they're on your target prospect list. there's there's a confluence here, right? Like they have work that needs to be done. They're hiring somebody, and we now know this because we have this little monitor running in the background. And here's your little like preset AI email for that person that you've been sort of talking to. It's now on time, the right message, fix it up, send it out, be done, right? So
excellent,
it
excellent.
works.
Great answers. And we're going to have everybody back because we've got over 200 people on this webinar today. Those of us in the speakers space can see that. So tons of interest, tons of comments. That's fantastic. Final CLE word is collaboration. And I thank our speakers for all being very collaborative on this call. I want to ask James a question, a parting question, and then James, you're going to do a presentation about the platform. I also want to note that we, encourage folks, right? Latera's supporting this. They've got a great platform. Reach out to them. They'd love to talk to you. We've put a poll in the poll section, so put in your email and they'll be in touch. But James, obviously, Postalize, you work cross-sectoral. Lee. Do you see any and Mark, you mentioned an interesting thing with PitchBook, right? That you bought that subscription service, which was aimed at private equity firms, but as a law firm, you're finding the value from it too. But James, to your point, I mean, is there something different? Is there a parallel sector to law that perhaps is a little bit ahead of the curve that you're seeing adopting this sort of CRM client focused tech stack that you could point to, and then tell us a little bit more about what it is you do. You can
Yeah,
show us so the audience
yeah.
can learn about it.
Absolutely. There are a couple of pieces of this, so I'd love to focus on answering a couple of questions. Rachel also gave a little bit of a preview on what I'm going to show, so I'm happy to jump into that in a second, but I do want to set that up. I would say overall, if you listen to the messaging coming from my fellow panelists, a lot of this applies deeply from a professional services perspective, whether that be legal, whether that be accounting, whether that be consulting, commercial real estate, wealth management, private equity, those sorts of things. The common denominator across these fields is really relationships, right? So if you think about that, the best pick any of the other ones I just mentioned there. The best consultant, the best accountant, the best wealth manager is the one that is looking out for your best interests, right? So to stand out above the crowd, it's not about the work that you can do. Again, lawyers, wealth managers, commercial real estate brokers, they are all very, very good at what they do from a job perspective. What sets them apart is how they pay attention to their clients and bring that value in their everyday interactions, right? So I've seen this particularly we work with other firms from a consulting perspective as well as commercial real estate and wealth management. They have the same challenges. They have a challenge of standing out, of noticing what matters to their clients, and to be ahead of that curve to make sure that they're paying attention to them and serving them ahead of time in a proactive manner. So that's what I've seen out there. Other professional services are in this same space and have the same challenges, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Do you just an add-on question to this? Because I mean the perception is that the legal industry is behind the curve of these other fields. Do you agree, disagree, or do you see a market shift right now? I mean, last week, perhaps a week before, I can't remember, the Anthropic announcement. I've
Yeah.
never seen the markets move because of legal tech moving into the legal sector announcement, the entire market move, which was telling. I mean, that's a different story. We could talk
Yeah.
about that another time. But do you where is legal lining up now, do you
Yeah,
see?
I would say probably if you see folks like let's pick the McKinseys of the world or the BCG
Sure.
of the world, those types of guys, you've seen kind of what's happening on their side of things. Announcements of 10,000 people being slashed, like the AI is coming for their jobs. Being able to replace consultants, just as an example. If you're looking again that kind of like that K-shaped type, growth in terms of the services versus kind of like what they provided previously. I think those guys are under tremendous pressure because
Mhm.
of the work that's possible through technology, right? So the
Yeah.
technology piece and what you can do with that is quickly taking over what's possible in terms of the lower end types of services that they do need to or they currently provide. And that impetus to move quickly I think it's faster compared to the law firm. So I think like consulting firms where they don't have a lot of differentiated services is where they feel a lot of that pain. So they are the ones
Okay.
that are probably trying to jump on top of AI and taking advantage of that to build better workflows to move them forward. But I
Yeah.
wouldn't say that law firms are that far behind. I think that pressure is still there and you still have to execute against it.
All right. Thank you, James. And also, those elite strategy consulting firms also they're in the business of consulting folks on how to adopt AI and their strategy around that in the first place. So they do have a bit of a head start, but it is interesting and encouraging, I think, for the folks on the call that, the perception that legal's always sort of behind. It's not different now. It's changing. And I think what James is saying there, mirrors that. So, James, I know we're almost at time, and I want you to do your presentation. So I'll
Absolutely.
hand it over to you, and then we'll wrap.
Yeah, absolutely. So if I may, I will actually just set up the story real quickly before I get into it. Rachel touched upon this a little bit, but I'm going to show an example of Sonder and Marriott. So for those that don't know what happened to Sonder, Sonder declared bankruptcy in the November timeframe, a 20-year partnership with Marriott, and basically they were starting to get into financial distress. On a Sunday, Marriott announced the partnership was ending. The next day, Sonder had to file a Chapter 7. Knowing what happened and going backwards, the key was to say, is there a place from a proactive perspective where somebody could have helped either Sonder, Marriott, or any of these commercial real estate landlords that were part of this overall partnership? So I wanted to show you what that looks like when it comes to a proactive signal on that side of things. Give me one sec. I will pull this up real quickly. And Andrew, can you see that? I just wanted to double check.
Yeah, can
Oh,
see it fine.
perfect.
Yeah, thanks.
So, following along this, I wanted to point out a couple of quick things. Being proactive means having a heads up, having the ability to actually reach out when it really matters, right? So, uh, part of the story, Saunders ended up filing that Chapter 7 in November of 2025. You'll see here we've got two signals, one in October, a 1 month lead time, knowing that something is about to happen to Saunders. And in fact, we also picked up that there was a going concern and substantial doubt about their liquidity in the July timeframe, 4 months ahead, right? So if you imagine this, if you are the lawyer on Saunders, you're getting this pre-warning, you know that something is about to happen. Obviously, we know hindsight is 2020, but imagine if you were able to jump on top of this and reach out to Saunders with 4 months to go. What could have happened? What could have changed from an outcome perspective? Could you have protected them better in that side of things? And I know we talked a lot about this this ability to write that 80% outreach type message. Imagine that I just click on the engage button. It helps take advantage of the event itself, who I know, and puts together a draft that I can reach out to them and offer my assistance in a proactive manner that is focused on what has actually happened in market. That's really what this is about, right? Helping you be that better lawyer, drive that value, and be able to see around the corner and get to the action aspect of that. So I just wanted to just show that really, really quickly. We're always happy to talk a little bit later with all the folks on the.
That's a very powerful message you have there in terms of the timeline, right? And the opportunity that creates for folks who are using this tech. Rachel, I just want to hand over to you. Anything to add from Latera's side as you're heavily involved in this?
The rubber meets the road when this is in front of your lawyers, right? So what you saw James show is a dashboard, and I don't know if you've ever tried to get lawyers to go to a dashboard, but they don't. So really what the goal here is to get it into their hands. And so it becomes the integration with Outlook where you can actually have this flowing through your AI agent. We have our AI agent called Lido, and that's where it actually becomes really usable and it becomes automated. So it's so powerful in and of itself, and then it's also very usable. So that's the only thing I'd add.
Great close. So thank you, James. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Mark, for all taking time out of your busy schedules to plan and participate on today's panel. We would love to have you all back. I think we could talk for another hour easily. We didn't cover everything we intended to, but I think we gave the audience a great outline of what this looks like in the AI era for client relationships. I want to thank Latera for supporting us for today's program. We're doing lots of programs with them this year, so delighted to be working with them. And I want to thank you, the audience, for being so engaged, all your comments. That's fantastic. Please reach out to us, fill out our exit survey, let us know what you want to learn more about. We're putting these webinars on all the time. And I hope everybody has a great rest of their day. You can find out more if you have any questions, email us about CLE, etc. We'll get back to you. All right. Take care, everybody. Have a good rest of your day. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.